Hello! Several years ago, I came across some very inexpensive 3-foot clamps, so I bought a few. Well, you know the saying, you get what you pay for. I've had trouble with these every time I've used them. Now, good quality 3-foot clamps might cost as much as $40 or $50 each. So, after looking at a few other people's ideas on the internet, I decided to go ahead and make one. So here's my prototype. Now before I show you how this works, I'm going to go ahead now and make 3 more. I bought 2 straight 8-foot 2x2s and cut them into 4-foot lengths. So now I'm going to take and mark one of them starting at 2 inches and then at 1-inch intervals up to the 30-inch mark. Next I'll line up all 3 pieces and then use this square to draw lines on all 3 of them. Once I have all 3 boards marked with the lines, I'm going to draw another line down the center. For that I'm just going to use this little tool that I made. It's a block of wood with a pencil in the middle of it and these 2 pins. I can take it, twist it like this, and then slide it down. And it marks the center. So now I have all of these marked for some 1/4 inch through holes. Another method I could have used to mark the hole locations would have been to take a piece of this pegboard and then use that like a template. So now that I got these marked, I'm going to go ahead and drill them all. I've cut some 3.5 inch long pieces of 2x4. So now I'm going to attach them onto the boards like this. The edge of the 2x4 is curved, so I want to keep that curved edge for the jaw. That way it's going to be less likely to mark whatever I'm clamping. So I'm going to put one of these nice flat cut edges onto the other piece and then attach it with some screws. Now so far with my tests with my prototype, these 2 screws are strong enough to hold this in place. If it turns out in the future that this wants to loosen up and twist this way, I can always reinforce it with a plate on each side and some bolts. Next I want to cut 3 pieces of 2x3, 3.5 inches long, and 3 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, 3.5 inches square. I'm going to mark the center point of these pieces of 2x3 and then I'm going to drill a 1/4 inch hole all the way through. Next I'm going to mark the squares of 3/4 plywood for some 1/4 inch holes all the way through. I'm going to want the holes to line up so they'll be in the center of this, so they need to be 3/4 of an inch in. I keep around this piece of 3/4 inch square because I find it really handy. I can just put it on and there's my holes marked, nice and easy. I also keep around this piece of 3/8 inch thick for marking the center of 3/4 inch. I also want to mark another hole location 1 inch in at the center. I've drilled all my 1/4 inch holes. Now I need to drill a hole for a 3/8 T-nut. The inside of the hole is 3/8, but the outside is 7/16. So that's the size hole I got to drill. Now that I have these drilled, I need to line them up and drill some corresponding bolt holes into these pieces. Since I've got 3 of them I'm going to do, I'm going to mark them 1, 2, 3 so I don't get them mixed up. I'm going to mark a little reference line like so that way I can make sure I line it up the same way again. First I'm going to use my drill and drill these holes just a little ways. That'll mark the proper location. Then I'm going to finish off the holes with the drill press. I'm going to go ahead and install these T-nuts. I want to make sure that when I have the pieces lined up properly, number 3 with number 3, and the reference line in the right place, the T-nut goes into this side, not this side. If you put it in this side, when the clamp's tightened, all that'll happen is the T-nut will push out of the hole. Now I'm going to make some handles to fit onto these 3/8 by 8" carriage bolts. These big carriage bolts, incidentally, are the most expensive piece of hardware. These were about $240 something a piece. I was lucky I had 4 of them laying around from a previous project. To make the handles, I used a piece of 2x2 cut to 3 inches long. I need to mark the center of this, so I can just draw a couple of lines across. Or I can use this little tool. I got the idea for making this off the internet. I just slip the wood in like this. And same idea, it marks the center. This tool is actually made for marking the center of round pieces. Mark at least 3 lines and where they meets the center. Sometimes if the piece isn't perfectly round, you'll end up with a little triangle, and you just mark the center of that. I tried using a piece of that 1" dowel to make my handles, but I found that the wood was too hard for me to be able to seat the carriage bolt into it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drill a 3/8" hole all the way through this. I'm going to use the belt sander to sand these corners down to give the handle kind of an octagonal shape. Now I need to make the pad that goes on the other end of this. Now you can make those square if you want to, but I decided to make round ones using a hole saw. For my prototype, I made one out of a piece of 1x4. The only thing though is because of the grain, I'm worried that if the clamp ever gets off center, this might break right in half. So I think I'm going to cut some new ones out of a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. First thing I want to do is use this 3/8 Forstner bit and drill 4 shallow 3/8 holes. The Forstner bit leaves a nice little dimple in the center that I can now use as the center point to drill 4 1/4 inch pilot holes. And now I can cut my circles out. Next, I'm going to sand all of these a little bit. And now I can finish drilling my 3/8 hole. Because I drilled that little bit of a hole to begin with, it's going to be easy for me to line up the bit so it's centered. Now I'm ready to assemble these. First I want to thread this into this piece. I want the T-nut to be on the opposite side from the handle. Next I'm going to thread on a 3/8 nylon lock nut. Once I have the nut threaded on, so about a 1/2 inch or so of thread is showing, I can put a 3/8 washer and then one of these pads. And they're just a tight enough fit, they just fit on there. Eventually I might have to do something different if they keep falling off, but it seems pretty good for now. Now I can bolt these 2 pieces together. First I want to make sure I got piece number 1 with piece number 1 and that the reference line is in the right place. But before I bolt those together, I need to install a 1/4 inch by 3½ inch long carriage bolt into this piece, making sure that the head goes in from this side. I'm going to bolt them together with 1/4 inch by 3.5 inch hex head bolts. This assembly mounts into any one of these holes. You simply slide it in to the hole that's closest to where you want it to be. I decided to go with longer bolts so I could put a fender washer and a wing nut on the other side for added security. Now some guys might not like that because now the clamp won't sit flat. But I can easily solve that problem by putting a couple of boards underneath. To test these out, I've attached all 3 of them across my table. Looks like they're going to be sturdy enough. I'm able to really crank this tight. Oh yeah. I've seen a similar clamp on the internet, but that one has this end of it fixed, and the block down here is the movable part. I think I like my way better for a couple of reasons. One is that I can turn this piece around, and now I've got a spreader instead of a clamp. The other advantage is that this piece is removable. So let's say if for some reason I needed a much longer clamp, I could take any piece of wood that was long enough, screw a block onto one end, drill a 1/4 inch hole at the other end, and pop this piece in, and I'd have a big long clamp. For storage, I made a couple of L-shaped brackets and mounted them up here in the rafters. That'll keep my clamps safe and out of the way until I need them. Thanks for watching.